The story centers on a man named John and his strong belief that his wife Ida has died. He remembers her being sick and fading away, and he has lived with this grief for many years. But one day John meets a young man named Ilgar, who carefully listens to John's memories. Ilgar tells him something unbelievable. Ida is not dead. She is alive. John refuses to believe it at first. His memories feel real. He remembers Ida's weakness, her illness, her final moments. He has convinced himself that she died long ago. But Ilgar insists that Ida is alive and wants John to see the truth. Slowly, John begins to remember details differently. He realizes that many of his memories might be illusions created by his own mind. For years, he lived in emotional darkness, believing in a death that never happened. Ilgar gently guides him to face the truth. As John's memory clears, he starts to understand. Ida did not die. He pushed her away. She left because of emotional distance and unresolved conflict, not death. John breaks down, realizing he spent years mourning something that never happened. He feels regret, shock, and deep pain. Ilgar stays calm, helping him process the truth. In the final moments, John finally accepts reality. But now he must face a much harder question. What will he do now that Ida is alive? Should he search for her? Will she accept him? Can he fix what he broke long ago? The story ends with John standing at a crossroads. His past was a lie. His memories were incomplete. His future depends on the courage to face the truth. Sometimes the most painful stories are not written by fate, but by our own memories. This is the story of John, a man who lived many years believing that the love of his life, Ida, was gone forever. He carried that grief in his heart like a heavy shadow, a shadow he thought would never fade. But he never imagined that one day, someone would walk into his life and tell him something that could break his entire world apart, or rebuild it. John lived a simple, quiet life. He avoided crowds, avoided conversations, and avoided anything that reminded him of the past. The world around him moved forward, but he stayed frozen in his memories. In his heart, Ida was still there. Her soft smile, her gentle voice, her eyes that once held all the warmth he needed. But in his mind, she was gone. He remembered her illness. He remembered her growing weaker day by day. He remembered holding her hand, feeling it become cold. He remembered the moment he thought she took her last breath. For years, he lived with this picture, a picture painted by pain, sealed by loneliness, and protected by the fear of facing the truth. One evening, John met someone unexpected, a young man named Ilgar. Ilgar looked at John with calm eyes as if he already knew the story hiding behind John's silence. There was something different about this man, something warm, something patient. John did not understand why Ilgar seemed interested in him, but he felt a strange comfort in his presence. After a long pause, Ilgar asked a simple question. "Tell me about Ida." The name itself hit John like a wave. He took a breath, a long one, and then he began to talk. He spoke slowly, as though pulling memories out of a deep, dark well. He described Ida's smile, the softness of her laughter, the way she filled the home with warmth even on the coldest days. Then his voice trembled as he told Ilgar about her illness, how she grew pale, how her body weakened, how she struggled to breathe. He told him about the nights when he sat by her side, terrified of losing her. Finally, he told him about the moment she died. Ilgar listened silently, not interrupting, not questioning, just listening. When John finished, he felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Then Ilgar said something that froze John in place. "John, Ida did not die." The world stopped. John stared at him, confused, almost angry. "What are you saying?" he whispered. His voice cracked like glass. Ilgar repeated it softly, carefully. "She did not die. Ida is alive." John's heart pounded. His breath stopped. His mind refused to accept it. He shook his head fiercely. "No, I saw her. I watched her fade away. I felt her slip from my hands." Ilgar spoke gently, his voice steady. "You saw pain. You saw fear. You saw your own guilt, but you did not see death." John felt a strange fear rising inside him, a fear of himself. a fear of what his mind might have created. He tried to remember the exact moment, the last breath, the final goodbye. But suddenly the picture blurred. The scene in his mind was no longer clear. It flickered like an old broken film. Ilgar continued. You believe she died because you could not face the truth. She left, but she did not die. Jean felt dizzy. His hands shook. He could not understand how his own memories could betray him. Why would she leave? He whispered. Ilgar looked down for a moment, then back up. Because the pain between you had grown too much. Jean felt something stab deep inside his chest. A pain sharper than grief, more dangerous than sadness. Could it be true? Had he spent years mourning a death that never happened? Had he suffered a loss that was never real? And worse, had Ida suffered alone somewhere while he lived inside a lie? Ilgar placed a hand on Jean's shoulder. You are not remembering her death, Jean. You are remembering your fear of losing her, and your mind turned that fear into the only truth it could accept. Tears filled Jean's eyes. His heart felt like it was breaking all over again. But this time, for a different reason. He whispered, Where is she now? Ilgar didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, he said, Before you know where she is, you must know what you did and what she went through. Jean felt the world closing in around him. For the first time in years, he realized that the story he believed in was not the whole truth. His memories were not facts. They were wounds, and wounds can twist reality. Ilgar looked at him and said, This is only the beginning, Jean. If you want to know the truth, you must be ready to face everything you buried. Jean swallowed hard. His life was no longer the quiet, lonely place he had built. Everything was changing. Everything was breaking. Everything was beginning. Because now he knew a truth that changed everything. Ida was alive, and nothing would ever be the same again. For years, Jean lived inside a memory he believed was the truth. But now, his truth was breaking. Ida was alive, and the man standing in front of him, Ilgar, knew more than Jean ever imagined. Jean felt like the world had been pulled out from under his feet. His hands were shaking. His breath was uneven. For a moment, he just sat there, staring at the ground, trying to understand how a memory could lie to him. Ilgar watched him quietly. He looked calm, almost too calm, as if he had prepared for this moment. Finally, Ilgar spoke. Jean, before you ask where Ida is, you must understand what happened between you and her. Jean swallowed hard. He wasn't ready for this, but he knew he had no choice. He nodded slowly. Ilgar began to explain. He told Jean that during Ida's sickness, something changed. Not in her body, but in her heart. She felt alone. She felt unheard. She felt like the walls of their home were closing in on her. And Jean, without realizing it, had built emotional distance between them. Not because he didn't love her, but because he was terrified of losing her. He thought staying quiet would keep her calm. He thought hiding his fear would protect her. He thought doing everything alone would make him stronger. But his silence became a prison for her. She wanted him to talk. She wanted him to cry. She wanted him to hold her and say, I'm scared too. But he never did. Ilgar's voice softened. She didn't want to die in your memories, Jean. She wanted to live with you, but she felt you pushed her away. Jean felt a tear slide down his cheek. I never meant to push her away, he whispered. I know, Ilgar replied, but pain doesn't ask for our permission. It changes us. Then Ilgar told him the truth he had been hiding for years. The day Jean believed Ida died. She didn't die. She left. She walked out of the house heartbroken and weak, but alive. She hoped Jean would come after her, but he never did. He was trapped inside his own fear, trapped inside the belief that she was slipping away forever. His mind created the ending he feared the most, and he accepted it without questioning it, because sometimes the brain protects itself by rewriting reality. Ilgar said, You were not remembering her death. You were remembering your fear, and over time, fear became memory. Jean held his head in his hands. How could I forget the truth? He whispered. Ilgar answered calmly, Because the truth was too painful, and your mind chose the easier story. Jean felt numb. He wanted to scream. He wanted to go back in time. He wanted to hold Ida and tell her everything he never said. But time only moves forward. He looked at Ilgar with desperate eyes. Where is she now? Ilgar didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, he asked, Are you ready to face the truth? All of it? Jean didn't know, but he nodded anyway. Ilgar took a deep breath. Ida rebuilt her life, slowly, painfully. She tried to forget the past. Jean's heart clenched. Is she happy? He asked, afraid of the answer. Ilgar hesitated. She survived, he said softly. But happiness is another story. Jean felt hope and fear collide inside him. He wondered if she hated him, if she resented him, if she ever thought about him after all these years. Then Ilgar said something that made his breath stop once again. She loved you, Nan. Even when she left, she loved you. That love didn't disappear. Jean closed his eyes. His voice trembled. Then why didn't she come back? Ilgar responded. Because some wounds never fully heal, and because she believed you didn't want her anymore. Jean looked confused. Why would she think that? Ilgar paused, then spoke carefully. Because she wasn't the only one who was hurting. You were too. But instead of letting her into your pain, you shut her out. Jean wanted to argue, to defend himself, to explain. But he couldn't, because deep inside, he knew it was true. His silence had pushed Ida into a world of loneliness. His fear had turned into distance, and his distance had turned into her heartbreak. He had lost her long before she walked out the door. Jean's voice was barely a whisper. Does she know I thought she died? Ilgar nodded slowly. Yes, she knows. Jean looked shocked. How? Ilgar hesitated again, this time longer than before. Something heavy was behind his silence. Finally, he said, Because I told her. Jean stared at him, confused. Why would Ilgar tell her something like that? Why did he even know? Who was he to Ida? Questions spun in Jean's head like a storm. He asked, Ilgar, how do you know all of this? Ilgar's eyes softened, but there was a sadness in them now. A sadness Jean hadn't noticed before. He answered quietly, Because Ida trusted me with her story. Jean felt a sharp twist in his chest. She trusted you? Yes, Ilgar said. For a long time. There was something in Ilgar's tone, something personal, something emotional. Jean could feel it, and for the first time, he wondered, who exactly was Ilgar to Ida? A friend? A caretaker? Someone closer? Someone she turned to in her pain? The thought frightened him. Ilgar continued, Jean, Ida did not forget you. She never could. But she built a life without you. Not because she wanted to, but because she thought she had no other choice. Jean whispered, And now? Ilgar looked directly into his eyes. Now the truth has returned. And the truth always demands something from us. Jean felt his heart pounding. What does it demand from me? Ilgar answered with a calm, deep voice. Courage. Jean remained silent. Then Ilgar added, And a journey. Jean frowned slightly. A journey? Ilgar nodded. If you want to see Ida again, you must come with me. There are things you must hear, things you must face, and things you must be ready to accept. Jean felt fear and hope crash into each other inside his chest. He didn't know what waited for him. He didn't know if Ida would welcome him or reject him forever. But he did know one thing. He needed the truth. He needed answers. He needed Ida. Ilgar stood up. If you are ready and the journey begins now. Jean took a deep breath, and slowly, he stood. This was not the end of his story. This was only the beginning of the truth.